Hey guys, it's time for our Wednesday night live at 5. I'm just gonna wait for you guys to join me. I tried to announce it twice so that you guys had the heads up. Let me know if it's too loud because I have my fan on, the windows open. It's kind of nice outside. I get really hot when I talk and then I get really red. So, hey guys. Thanks for joining. I'm just gonna wait for everyone to join and then go ahead and ask your questions whenever they kind of come to you, and we'll have a good Q&A today. I appreciate you guys taking your time. I tried to give you guys the heads up twice so that you wouldn't forget. I'm going to try to do Wednesday nights at 5 p.m. my time. So I know some of you guys are on the East Coast or Midwest, so it's not 5 your time, but I live on the West Coast. So live at 5 for me. I love these lives. I love them too. And I know a lot of you have been asking about getting these uploaded, and they absolutely will be uploaded. I'm just waiting until I have those 10,000 followers so I don't have to upload them into 7 different parts. Sometimes they're like 17 different parts if I go live for 2 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So okay, let's see. What kind of questions do you prefer? Only health. You guys can ask me whatever questions. This is kind of like an ask me anything. If you guys want to know more about me, that's totally fine. I just never want to talk about myself because this page and my business is all about you. So, I never want to overly talk about myself because I don't really matter. You matter. I'm taking Ancestral Natural Desiccated Thyroid. How many tables do you suggest that I use per day? I'm assuming you meant tablets. It really depends. They have a really informational, wonderful page on their website, on their actual website, regarding figuring out your titration and what you want to do for titrating up. Usually when it comes to any kind of glandular supplements, you don't want to just start big. You want to start really small. Work your way up to find your dose. Everyone's really different, and that's why I always encourage you to experiment on your own body. Don't take what somebody else tells you is right and just take that as advice for your own body, because that's usually not going to be what works for your body. So it's super important to learn about something, do as much research as possible so you understand it, and then you can see how it interacts with your own body. But I recommend starting at the very smallest dose, waiting about 3 to 4 days, see how you feel. If you feel good there, maybe stop. If you need more, slowly move up. I think the max dose is 6 to 8 tablets, but you would definitely want to work your way up very slowly on that because it can be very stimulating. And not everybody needs thyroid supplementation. Excuse me, I just went down the wrong pipe. Hi, thoughts and info on histamine intolerance. A doc did a consult and mentioned it could be the big missing thing with my array of symptoms with healing gut and thyroid as well. So you guys, this really weird obsession with histamine is kind of new, and people need to understand 2 things about histamine. Histamine is not a histamine issue. I know you want it to be a histamine issue, but it's not. It is an estrogen issue, and it is a histidine issue. So histidine is an amino acid that needs to get broken down in the body properly. Gut bacteria help you break down histidine, But estrogen looks a lot like histamine, and it also drives histamine, and it drives prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are present throughout your whole body, and they're what drive inflammation. The higher your prostaglandins are, the more inflamed you will be. And so histamine is greatly affected by gut bacteria, estrogen, which can impair histidine detoxification, or it can also increase inflammation or prostaglandin production. So the inability to break down histamines has very little to do with histamines themselves and everything to do with the fact that your gut bacteria is out of whack, or you have too much bad bacteria that's actually blocking the DAO enzyme from being produced. The DAO enzyme is what breaks down histamines. And then estrogen can also impair histamine detoxification, which is usually the main culprit. And usually imbalanced bacteria and estrogen dominance are always together. They're very rarely separate. So usually when somebody has bacteria growing in their small intestine where it doesn't belong, they're not detoxifying estrogens properly from the gut either. And so those two are really driving the body's inability to break down histamines. But people just love to search out new and interesting things because they don't understand how the body actually works. They start to like pull these like random fringe things. I see people on like histamine diets and I'm just like, they don't see the big picture. Histamine is not the issue, it's being blamed, but histamine can drive symptoms for sure. But you need to ask yourself again, like I always say, what's the right question? It's not how do I break down histamines, it's why is this happening in the first place? Because a healthy body breaks down histamines, no problem. Hi, what impact does a lot of diet soda have on one's hormone or insulin resistance? Aspartame or, artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and Splenda are, every time you drink them, they rip holes in your mucosal barrier. They actually rip holes in the lining. You have to understand that the reason they're not processed by like sugar is because they are more like a poison to your body. And so your body actually has to send them to the liver instead to be broken down so they're not very damaging to the body. So the gut, they actually have to go through the gut walls, pull the gut walls apart, go through the gut walls. They cause tiny perforations, which affect your nutrient absorption, affects bacterial balance in the gut, and then they actually go to the liver, which has to break them down as if they were a toxin. So overall, diet soda is super awful for your health, seriously. Like, I wish people would just drink regular Coca-Cola over diet soda. If I was to pick one or the other, Coca-Cola with real sugar or even high fructose corn syrup all the way. Aspartame and sucralose destroys your gut health. And then on top of it, when your body tastes sweetness, you have to understand the minute your tongue tastes sweetness, your pancreas secretes insulin. So when you don't get an actual hit of sugar, your body was going to secrete insulin so that the blood glucose could be used and actually put in the cells. And when you do not consume sugar, but you give your body a taste of sugar, your body actually prepares for that sugar. And if there's no sugar, the blood glucose has to drop really, really low because insulin is making all the glucose go into the cells. And so then you start to have more sugar cravings. Your body needs sugar because your blood sugar has actually dropped so low or you've become hypoglycemic. So artificial sweeteners, specifically like sucralose and aspartame and stuff like that, is literally the devil. Like, I would highly recommend not consuming them. When is your program coming out? I'll be announcing a launch date next week. I'm honestly not sure quite yet. Like, I'm trying to get everything figured out. I was working on the recipe book all day today for it, and I'm continuing to do that. So my assistant Rebecca is in Europe right now. Dang her. But I am kind of doing like double time right now, and so I cannot launch the program until she gets back. And she gets back on May 1st. So it'll be sometime after that, but I will be announcing it a set date next week. If my progesterone levels were good, but it's not following the right detox path, what does that mean? For progesterone, usually that's estrogen that's the problem, but progesterone, I don't know what tests you got done that actually showed your progesterone detoxification, but, all hormones are detoxified in the liver, period. If progesterone's not detoxifying properly, neither is estrogen, neither is testosterone. Your liver is the main cornerstone when it comes to actually detoxifying hormones. So if you're not detoxing hormones well, your liver's struggling. And what do we need to support the liver, you guys? We need those 4 main components. We need plenty of sugar. We need plenty of saturated fats, not polyunsaturated. We need plenty of protein, and we need plenty of salt. Those are the 4 foundational things you need for a healthy liver. And if you don't have those things, no amount of milk thistle, chlorella, green juice, or anything else will help your liver. How can I get on your wait list? Send an email to the email that's attached to my account. That is my assistant's email. And so, like I said, she is in Europe right now, so I've been kind of taking double time. And so if you've sent an email to the support@jessicaashwellness.com email, know that I see them. I just went in and checked them today, and I will be getting back to them slowly. It's just kind of be a slow return time. But just send an email to support@jessicaashwellness.com. Say you're interested in getting on the waiting list. I'm actually going to be intaking quite a few clients on the wait list soon, and so the next round of people will get updated. What's the one main thing to help hair fall? You know, this is really relative on the person. I wish I could give you one thing, but it really depends on the person. Like for somebody that's super emotionally stressed out and has a husband that beats her, that is the thing that's going to eliminate stress the most and help with hair fall. For a woman that's consuming a food that's daily inflaming her, that's going to be her stressor. That's probably going to be the main thing in removing hair fall. So it's very dependent on the person, but remember that hair fall is usually due to stress on the body, whether that's from nutrient deficiencies, whether that's from lack of blood flow to the actual hair follicles, whether that is inflammation of the body, so aka inflammation of the scalp, and then thyroid issues. So if those imbalances continue to burn like a fire, your hair will continue to fall out. And that's why like sometimes when people have hair fall, they're trying to, they're trying one thing and it kind of helps, but it doesn't help that much because maybe it's inflammation. We'll use that for an example. You have inflammation throughout the body and your scalp is inflamed. So you implement turmeric, let's say something for inflammation, and it helps. It kind of slows your hair fall down, but it doesn't help completely, right? Because it's a multitudinal problem. It's not just the turmeric's not going to heal the fire. You have to put out the fire. You have to actually remove the foods that are inflaming you, remove chemicals from your environment. So hair loss, unfortunately, is a very actually complex issue that has lots and lots of layers, and it's about actually, like I always say, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's not as much as healing your body as it is by slowly removing the things that are burdening your body and adding in things that allow your body to get a foothold above those stressors, which is usually a nutrient-dense diet that is not irritating to your body. This is very contrary to what a lot of people think, but I've had a lot of people that get really freaked out about the fact that I promote dairy and that I talk about how vegetables and nuts, green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables and nuts can be highly inflammatory for most people. Because if you think about like your gut lining as a very, very delicate skin that's very mucousy, and picture something like that being scraped constantly. Scrape. Can you imagine if your skin was just constantly scraped? Can you imagine how your skin would break down? Eventually it would like wear down, right? And that's exactly what's happening with hard to digest foods like nuts and raw leafy greens and too many cruciferous vegetables, which is just being so heavily promoted in this hormone and gut healing world. And people are not seeing the common sense of like, these are some of the most difficult to break down plant foods on the planet Earth, and yet we're promoting them as a health food. And I'm just like mind blown. So, really when it comes to removing irritation and inflammation in the body, it's about eating nutrient dense, easy to break down and absorb. We can't forget that part. Easy to break down, absorb foods that can be absorbed as nutrients and utilized in things like hair follicles. And that's going to include dairy. That's going to include eggs, which are two of the most bioavailable sources of protein. That's going to include a lot of vegetables coming from roots, not fibrous, dense, irritating vegetables. And then also easy to digest like broths and meats and fruits. Really ripe fruits are easy to digest, but really like focusing on foods that you can absorb as nutrients to help the hair follicles, and then also lower inflammation and not really irritate the gut lining over and over, if that makes sense. But that's usually what I focus on. And then if hair fall is just getting worse and worse and worse, usually it's a thyroid issue, a low T3 issue to be exact, not just like getting your TSH checked. That's worthless. Remember, you want to see that T4, the hormone that your thyroid makes, is being converted into T3 in both the gut and the liver, which is where it's converted. Hi Jess, have you seen spirulina cause hair loss? Yes, because all these weird plant foods that are being promoted nowadays, they are usually like not really meant to be eaten daily. Like they're one of those things where like, do you really think your ancestors went and scraped moss off of a rock every single day and was like, I got my daily dose of algae? Like, no, dude. So you got to think of it as from an ancestral perspective. Like maybe they were scraping algae off rocks when they were starving, or maybe they were getting that like maybe once a week or so as a medicinal thing. But these weird superfoods that are being promoted in our health and wellness community, I just take a step back and I'm like, whoa. Do you even know, like they'll say like, oh, this is a traditional food, or this was something that's been used for thousands of years. And I'm like, yeah, it was used thousands of years when people were like super, super sick, not just like as a daily supplement to add to your smoothies. So I've definitely seen spirulina cause hair loss because it's very rich in iodine, and it can be contaminated by heavy metals because it does come from freshwater sources. So that's why you really do need to be concerned with where your spirulina is coming from, first of all. And second of all, never consume a food rich in iodine every single day or you're going to destroy your thyroid. Hey. Any tips for preventing migraines? Yeah, usually it's due to estrogen. Like, estrogen drives migraines. Sometimes it can be a structural issue. So you have something called fascia, which is like a spider-like web that like weaves through your whole entire body, and it tightens all your muscles together and kind of keeps them together. A massage therapist could probably explain that a million times better than me. But sometimes the fascia that is around your head can get really, really tight or bunched up. And so I've actually seen physical therapists work on individuals that had really tight fascia and were struggling with like migraines that just continued, and they got their fascia worked on and it helped with their migraines. Some people, their migraines are driven by estrogen, especially if it's cyclical, like you're finding that your migraines are happening or getting worse around a specific time. But usually progesterone, or at least working on boosting your progesterone, can really, really help with migraines. Also, really focusing on liver support to make sure that your detoxification pathways are open and you're actually detoxing estrogens is also important. So migraines are usually due to estrogen or inflammation or structural tightness, and it could be a variety of those things or just one of those things, so it's important to kind of troubleshoot. Tips on bloat because of PCOS. So people don't bloat because of PCOS. People bloat because they have low progesterone or they are not digesting their food well. PCOS does not cause bloating, you guys. So PCOS is a collection of symptoms. Every woman with PCOS has a different collection of symptoms. Most women with PCOS have slow digestion due to low T3, low thyroid issues, so your metabolism is moving slow. So why would you feel like your fuel would move quickly through your digestive tract? Think about it. If you were driving a Ferrari at 2 miles per hour down the road, you would probably have to fill up a lot less frequently than if you were driving that Ferrari 100 miles an hour down the road. So you need to understand that the faster your metabolism is working, the faster your digestion will work, because the faster your body needs nutrients. And women with PCOS have a very slow moving digestion, which leads to fermentation and rot in the small intestine. Remember, the small intestine is supposed to be sterile. The only place bacteria should be is in the large intestine and sometimes in the stomach, but not in the small intestine. And so when we start to get that slow moving food through the digestive tract, and then on top of it, bacteria is fermenting and rotting in the small intestine, that leads to absolutely bloat. So it is a systemic issue. A lot of times women who have low progesterone also get bloated. So if it is after food, that is usually digestive bloat. And if it's if it's during a certain time of your cycle, like from the middle of your cycle up until your period, or specifically concentrated the week before your period, usually that's due to low progesterone, because progesterone is a diuretic. But yeah, you have to first pinpoint where the bloating is coming from. Is it coming from the gut or hormones? And then you would work on that. But usually it's about eating foods that are easily digested and broken down. You might need to increase stomach acid or increase digestive enzyme production, which can be low because of stress or thyroid issues, or just, you need to supplement with them. So there could be a million reasons for bloat, and it's more of like you want to see it as a whole body issue. Bloating is usually caused by water retention in the midsection, but why is that happening? How to dose Cascara Sagrada? Should it be with each meal to keep things moving, and try go multiple times per day, or only taking once? Yeah, I recommend, there's a lot of fear surrounding Cascara Sagrada, because in, I believe, the early 2000s, the FDA freaked out about it. It's not good to take if you have really super irritable bowels, or Crohn's disease, or an active inflammatory bowel syndrome. But if you are, just trying to move things along, usually if I was using it for myself, I usually take it once per day. You have to make sure your Cascara Sagrada comes from a good source and is aged properly. I like Mountain Rose Herbs the best. And then I would only take it once per day. And I would start very, very small and work your way up to a dose that you need. But that's something that you definitely want to do research on. You want to kind of experiment a little bit on yourself and figure out what works for you. Everyone's different. But for like an easy kind of thing, Organic Olivia has a supplement called Keep It Moving, which has, I believe 200 milligrams of Cascara Sagrada in it, but it also has Triphala and a few other herbs that help move things along. So I like her supplement Keep It Moving, and it's a good way to like get introduced to Cascara Sagrada to see if it works for you. Yay, what's your thoughts on entering into a supportive relationship that feels foreign but good at the same time? Yeah, I mean, it depends on foreign. If it's foreign because it pushes you out of your comfort zone, that's good. But if it's something that maybe is, I mean, I have no certifications to give life advice, but I find that now, like, as I've grown and changed with a man that has supported me through, just growing and changing, starting my business, that kind of thing, that you should never enter into a relationship that you are uncomfortable with, that you have a gut check about, that there's something off about it. There's a difference between being foreign and being like something that is going to be a really good thing but it scares you, and something that is going to be that your body or yourself is telling you it's not for you, and yet you're going against your body's wishes anyways. That's why I always say your gut tells you what's up. And if you have even a slight check in your mind, there's something off that should be explored. So that's kind of what I would do in that situation. Hi, Melina. You look like gorgeous. Thank you, sir. Do you have any recommendations for a post-preeclampsia diet? Yeah, so preeclampsia is usually caused by low vitamin K and improper sodium levels. Just like morning sickness, you guys, is caused by low salt in a pregnant woman, so is usually preeclampsia. Unfortunately, when you get morning sickness, especially if you get it really bad in the beginning of your pregnancy, you usually have a tendency to develop blood pressure issues because you're not getting adequate levels of sodium. And a lot of women are walking around sodium deficient anyways, and so they don't realize it, and then they get pregnant and their needs for salt increase, and yet like dieting rules are telling you go lower on the salt, and your body's like, no, I need salt, and then by the end of your pregnancy it's like, I can't do it any longer. So preeclampsia is caused by a multitude of issues, but a lot of times I've read certain studies that say it has something to do with vitamin K, and it has a lot to do with minerals and specifically sodium levels. So I would make sure you're getting plenty of high quality salt like Himalayan pink salt and Celtic sea salt. Even Morton's canning salt is a really good salt. And then just taking care of yourself. So lowering stress, just like the regular stuff. Whenever it comes to like these different conditions, I always say to people, like, you just really want to, it's the same fix for everything. Rest, listen to your body, don't push it. Try to eliminate environmental stressors like chemicals as much as possible. Try to eliminate, topical stressors like toxic, hygiene products, and then try to make sure that your environment is positive, so you're not around super negative people that are sucking the life out of you. And then also focus on nutrient density of your foods and nutrition and taking care of your body in that way. But I always prioritize stress first, you guys. Like, I always say it because it's so much more important than the physical things that you can do. You have to get into an environment that allows healing. But as long as you're recovering well and you're doing what your doctor said and you feel like you're improving day by day, that's all that matters. Can I get enough healthy fats and protein while eating minimal animal products? They seem to exacerbate acne for me. Yeah, so when animal products exacerbate acne, usually it's due to low stomach acid. A lot of women have low stomach acid. I mean, if you have any hormonal imbalances, you have low stomach acid. If you have any stress issues, you have low stomach acid. If you don't get enough minerals, you have low stomach acid. And so it's one of those things where it's really impossible to get enough. Like, I always say, like, I'll tell you a secret, sis, is that it is impossible to get enough protein without eating animal products. Not necessarily because plants don't have protein, which vegans get crazy about. It's not that I'm saying that. I'm not an idiot. But what I am saying is that each body breaks down protein from plant foods and animal foods very differently, and plant foods are very difficult to break down, you guys. So you absorb about 14% of the protein from animal foods. Plant foods, excuse me. So let's say you say like, oh, there's 20 grams of protein in my kale. I'm like, well, you probably only absorbed like 5 grams of that. And so compare that to animal products, which you absorb sometimes up to 50% of the protein there. You're getting a lot more protein. And so I recommend, if you have a hard time digesting animal products, you need to stick to broths, and you need to stick to gelatin and collagen and bone broth. Those are really probably the only ones you can digest and absorb anyways, but you will not digest or absorb protein from plants at all if that's exacerbating, if animal products are exacerbating the issue. Because if they are, then that shows your digestion is really impaired. And if you can't break down animal foods, you definitely can't break down plant foods. So that's kind of something that the way that you have to look at it. But I would check out a digestive enzyme that contains hydrochloric acid, or doing hydrochloric acid. Something called the HCl challenge can be very, very helpful for people that can't break down animal products. So just type that in on Google, HCl challenge, and it'll talk about how to do that properly. Is kombucha as good for your gut as the hype? Hell no. That's like a wild yeast being grown who knows where and who knows what. Like, do you watch your kombucha being made? No. Have you seen how nasty that slimy little yeast thing is called the mother? No. Kombucha is a hype, you guys, and unless you have a super solid gut, meaning you are for sure, your gut is high functioning, perfectly balanced, everything's good, your defense system is up, then you can drink kombucha. But if you have really disrupted gut function, a lot of times the wild, weird strains of yeast that grow in kombucha are usually actually more damaging than they are helpful. Now, there's a difference between yeast and then like a kefir. So, kombucha is brewed with like that mother, that yeast, that slimy like layered thing. If you've ever seen a kombucha mother, you know what I'm talking about. But kefir is you usually use a kefir starter there, and it's usually bacteria based, so not yeast based. So if I was going to do like a tonic and I wanted to like make a tonic, I would do more of like a bacteria based, like a kefir base, than a kombucha base. It's not like I don't ever drink kombucha, like I do, but I don't treat it as like a health thing. I treat it as like if I was going to treat an alcoholic beverage. Like, I know it's probably not the best for me, but I'm enjoying it anyways. But if you like the fizz, I really recommend sparkling water like Perrier or San Pellegrino or something like that, and then splash some juice in it, like some tart cherry juice, some guava juice, some beet juice, balsamic vinegar. Like, I always encourage you to just make your own sodas with sparkling water. How to dose, okay, I already talked about how to dose Cascara Sagrada. Do you recommend eating pollen for B vitamins? No. You can eat bee pollen. It's not like the worst thing for you. It can be helpful with allergies in some people, but you could probably get some B vitamins. I don't think it has B12 in it, but I would recommend eating grass-fed beef liver and grass-fed beef for B vitamins over like some kind of bee pollen. But if you like it and makes you feel good and it helps with your allergies, by all means, bee pollen can be a really nutrient-dense kind of superfood. Okay, do you have a code for Morocco Method? I don't. I was even thinking about reaching out. I actually have 0 promo codes. I haven't partnered with any brands so far. So I've waited on that just because I don't like to really spam you guys with sales, and I'm not trying to make a few quick bucks on an affiliate code, you know what I mean? But I was thinking maybe I should actually reach out for promo codes just to give you guys the discount. So that is one company that I really want to partner with. So I have it on my schedule, once my assistant gets back, to have her send them an email to see what we can work out. And then if I do get a promo code with them, I will let you know. But yeah, I haven't actually partnered with many brands at all. A lot of brands will send me stuff, but I'm I just don't want to ever be inauthentic with you guys or sleazy or try to come off as salesy, because I'm not trying to make a quick buck off you. You know what I mean? Use my affiliate codes. I think it just gets kind of annoying. Can you use progesterone cream on the body in the same area every day, or should I change areas? I wouldn't obsess about it. I always try to encourage you to do it on thin skin if you're doing progesterone cream, so it doesn't store up in the fat cells. But it's good to maybe switch from one wrist to the other wrist, and kind of mix it up. I wouldn't put it on the same exact spot every single day, but I wouldn't worry about it. Does it matter which salt, Himalayan or Celtic? I never know if I should say Celtic or Celtic. I know it's Celtic, but I say Celtic sometimes. Also, what does it mean if you crave salty, never sweet? You definitely need salt. That's the first thing. I always say, you guys, use cravings as a compass. I know we've been programmed as women to think that cravings are bad, cravings are naughty. No. Cravings are actually a biological signal to tell you what to seek out and what to eat. If your body needs energy and quick fuel, you're going to crave sugar. If your body needs salt because it needs tightly regulated sodium levels, you will crave something salty because your body knows that potato chips are where it gets salt. But if you retrain it and you give your body salt all the time on all your food or in your water when you need it, then your body won't crave chips anymore because it's just getting salt. So use your cravings as a compass. If you crave salt, you need salt. I usually recommend having Himalayan pink salt, Celtic sea salt, and Morton's canning salt on hand to kind of mix up the salts that you use, but it doesn't really matter. Also, some women with gut issues and hormone issues find that dissolving half a teaspoon of baking soda in water, because it is just salt, just in a different form, can be really soothing to the stomach because it actually does neutralize the stomach's pH for a second, but then it actually makes the hydrochloric acid that's produced later more powerful. So I always recommend, if you're going to do baking soda, you do it in between meals, but that's a great way to get salt in too. You just don't want to do too much because it can it really balances the pH of the body and you don't want that. Haven't gotten my period since I stopped and wrapped up birth control at the end of March. What should I be doing to get it back? Taking Vitex and myo-inositol. March, April. Yeah, so you shouldn't actually take Vitex until 3 months after you stop the pill. That's well, at least in my opinion, because it's your body's trying to slowly start communicating between the ovaries and the pituitary gland again, and you want that re-communication to happen slowly. You don't want to jolt them awake, and Vitex does jolt them awake. So your body might have not been ready yet, and so that could be why. Myo-inositol is helpful. I would wait till the 3 month mark for Vitex. And then, you just have to give it time. March is still pretty soon. A lot of times it can take up to 8 weeks, sometimes 3 months to get an ovulation back. So remember, your goal is not to actually get a period back. And that's never the goal, you guys. I know that we think of our period as our cycle, but our ovulation is the king of the cycle. Ovulation is the goal. The period is just a result of a proper ovulation. And so you want to make sure you are doing things that support ovulating, support progesterone. I have so many highlights on that. I have one literally labeled progesterone that talks about how to get your body ovulating if it's not, and then if it isn't, if it is, how to boost progesterone levels and get you ovulating better. If not, it could be a thyroid issue. It could be a detox issue. It could be a nutrient deficient issue. I would say that probably 90% of the time after post-pill, especially if you've used the pill long term, it's a thyroid issue, because it kind of really, honestly, I don't want to say the word it shuts down the thyroid, but really when you stop your body from making progesterone, you're not making any, and remember, the progesterone in the pill, or synthetic progestins in the pill, act nothing like progesterone. And so remember, halfway through your cycle, when you ovulate and you create progesterone, your thyroid is getting directly stimulated. That's why you always see a TEP spike once you ovulate. And so when you're not ovulating all that time on the pill, you're not making any progesterone, your thyroid is taking a direct hit. And if that is happening for the very long time, your thyroid's constantly taking a hit every single, the whole time while you're on it. And so sometimes, unfortunately, women do develop hypothyroidism or low T3 syndrome on the pill. Remember that, so there's actually evidence that women on the pill do ovulate, and they do get pregnant regularly, or the egg does get fertilized regularly, and the cutoff of progesterone actually deters the egg from being implanted into the uterus, therefore causing if you want to call it a miscarriage after 2 weeks, that's what it's causing. So there is evidence that that's actually how the pill works, and not actually stopping you from ovulating, which I just found out, and I'm just like, whoa. But anyways, it's depleting you of nutrients, it's blocking your liver, so you can't really sustain a healthy pregnancy. And so you have to understand that after the pill, you're trying to get your fertility back. You're trying to get your body into a place where nutrients aren't depleted any longer, liver detoxification isn't impaired, gut health is healthy, thyroid is high functioning, your body's detoxifying estrogens properly and ovulating to make enough progesterone. So there's steps when it comes to post-pill, and unfortunately it can take some time. It's one of those things where you kind of have to give it some time, and then at the 3 month mark, that's when you start to kick things into gear and implement a protocol. Do you know how much how much about hemochromatosis and how it might relate to other issues. I've actually never heard of that. So unfortunately, guys, I don't know everything, and I've never heard of that condition. Do you recommend avoiding erythritol and xylitol as well? I don't necessarily recommend avoiding them at all costs, especially if you can tolerate them well, but using them in exchange for sugar usually doesn't help you out. Because like I said before, when your tongue tastes sweetness, your body creates an insulin response right away. And if there's no glucose for that insulin to let into the cell, blood glucose levels drop very significantly and very quickly. And so if you want to lower the amount of sugar you're eating and you don't want to do a cup of organic cane sugar in baking, maybe do half a cup of organic cane sugar and half a cup of xylitol in order to provide your body with some sugar, so when your blood sugar levels do drop, they don't drop so significantly low that it puts you into a hypoglycemic response and then induces your body to actually have to raise stress hormones in order to make more glucose. So it's a vicious cycle. Your body will make glucose if there's not enough glucose, and so your goal is to not have your body secrete stress hormones to make glucose, and that's why we provide our body with glucose. I lost weight when I started eating healthy food. How can I increase my weight in a healthy way? A lot of times when we switch to a healthier diet, we sometimes restrict food unknowingly, so we didn't realize how many calories we were eating before, and then how significantly they dropped when we started eating healthfully. So it is important to make sure that you're eating enough. Most women need around 2,000 to 2,500 calories when their metabolism is working properly and when they're active. Obviously, it depends on your energy output. If you're sitting around all day and you don't exercise ever, you probably don't need that many calories or that much energy. But a woman's body is cycling. Your body's preparing for pregnancy usually, and so even if you're not trying to get pregnant, your body's still doing that, and you need a sufficient amount of calories. You don't need to be eating 1,500 calories or the designated amount for a 5-year-old girl. So make sure you're eating enough calories, make sure that you're eating enough protein, carbs, and fat, and that's where I would start. How do you know if a type of exercise is too stressful to your body or just a good workout? For instance, I can barely breathe about 5 minutes into HIIT. Yes, so obviously exercise while it's happening should be hard. It should not be so hard that you pass out or throw up or anything like that, but it should be challenging. But you should be able to recover well afterwards. That's how you know if exercise is too much for you or not. So if you're not recovering after an hour, you should feel winded, you should feel tired after a workout, but after an hour, you should feel energized. You should not be feeling really low throughout the day, or like you don't recover from your workouts very well, or if you're so sore or so tired by 3 p.m. that day, you're not recovering from your workouts well. So it's not how you're doing while you're working out, it's how you're recovering from your workouts that show you if it's beneficial or not. Sorry if this is double post, I think it disappeared, but do you know much about, I don't know about hemochromatosis and how it may relate with other issues and hormones. I've just never heard of it. I will look into it because whenever someone mentions something I don't know, I immediately have to know about it. But I'll see if I can do some research on that. Why did my doctor tell me to get a follicle scan after my blood results came back a little high in LH levels for PCOS diagnosis? Well, LH levels are high. A lot of times they do worry about PCOS. A lot of doctors, so remember there are some deciding factors when it comes to PCOS for a doctor to actually be able to diagnose you. They can't just diagnose you with PCOS without you having certain things showing up. So the first thing is that your body has to either polycystic ovaries have to either show up on an ultrasound, or you need to be not ovulating. So it's either or. A lot of doctors don't realize that, and they actually will diagnose you based on what your ovaries look like. But there has to be another thing in addition to either polycystic ovaries or an ovulation, and that is high androgens or the symptoms of high androgens. So either high androgens have to show up on a blood test, or you have to have symptoms of high androgens like acne, hirsutism, hair loss, that kind of thing. And so a lot of doctors just look at your ultrasound alone and want to diagnose you with PCOS based on that. That's actually not allowed, technically. That's not the only thing, because many healthy women or many women struggling with other issues like thyroid issues, hypothalamic amenorrhea, they'll have polycystic ovaries show up on a scan as well, because polycystic ovaries are not cysts on your ovaries, you guys. It's a misnamed syndrome. It's poly or many cysts, aka follicles. Many follicles ovarian syndrome, because when many follicles show up on your ultrasound, that just means you're not ovulating. Because remember, before you ovulate, 8 to 12 follicles are racing for the finish line to be the 1 or 2 eggs that make it towards ovulation. So when you see multiple follicles on an ultrasound, it is before an ovulation, or it means that you're not ovulating. So it depends on what time in your cycle you get that ultrasound done. It depends on so many things. And there are many women with other conditions that can also have polycystic ovaries show up on an ultrasound because they're not ovulating due to hypothyroidism or hypothalamic amenorrhea, meaning they're exercising too much or eating too little. And that's why you can't use that only thing. But why your doctor wants to do it, she probably wants to give you a PCOS diagnosis and thinks that you need to see polycystic ovaries in order to give a PCOS diagnosis. If you're worried about them sticking the wand up and giving you a pelvic ultrasound, you can tell her that. She will have to diagnose you based on other things. So, it is good to get a pelvic ultrasound. I personally got at least one. I've gotten two, but I got at least one I wanted to see. I think it's a little invasive to do, all the time. There's no reason to. If you're ovulating and you're feeling good, everything's fine, unless you struggle with ovarian cysts, which are a whole different issue, or fibroids or things like that, then you want to get regular checks. But yeah, she probably wants to see if you have polycystic ovaries showing up on an ultrasound. That was a long answer to that question. Are you familiar with the Forefront website? Are you familiar with the thyroid products that they promote? No, I've never heard of Forefront. What do you think about iodized salt? If you want to get some iodine in that way, you absolutely can. I don't really think it's necessary if you're just doing regular iodine-rich foods like shellfish and putting like some seaweed in your broths once in a while and things like that. Suggested exercise regimen for thyroid problems, and when you already have fatigue and feel like you have no energy/depression, you shouldn't be exercising at all. That is really the answer to that question. I would recommend like long walks in the sun and, stretching, foam rolling, that kind of thing, but really listening to your body. Exercise is different than movement, you guys, and exercise is not always good. It can sometimes just be stressful for the body. So when it comes to struggling with fatigue and struggling with thyroid issues and struggling with low energy and depression, I recommend doing things that you enjoy, getting out in the sun, walking around, doing things that you enjoy movement-wise, but not really forcing an exercise regimen. It's just not going to be in your best interest. My joints have been cracking like crazy for the past 2 weeks, came off the pill a month ago. Is there a possible correlation? Yes, I see this. A lot of women tell me, they're like, my joints are cracking, my bones are cracking, what's going on? And it's so funny because like that is not a normal hormone syndrome, but I think I personally see that it is because so many people come to me talking about their joints cracking and their joints popping and sounding kind of crunchy, like bone-like. And I think it has something to do with the body I think that after the pill, if you got your hormones checked, they would be all over the place. Because remember, once you remove synthetic hormones from the body, like the pill was, it completely shuts down the cycle. When you remove that, the body's like, holy shit, like the ovaries have to start producing hormones again for the first time in however long you have been on the pill. And so when the ovaries aren't producing sex hormones, the adrenals are overproducing, the thyroid's probably on the DL, and so there's just a mess hormonally. And so I would assume that there's probably high stress hormones playing a role. And remember, stress hormones like prolactin and growth hormone and cortisol, adrenaline, TSH, mostly cortisol and adrenaline actually break down tissue, specifically muscle tissue, cartilage, skin, anything that has amino acids in it. Will send it to the liver to be converted into glucose to keep the blood sugar level stable. When you guys are stressed out, you guys are burning through fuel like nonstop. And a lot of people are, they're like, oh, I need to heal my gut and I need to heal my this and heal my this. And I'm like, and so they're forgetting to eat regularly and eat balanced meals regularly. And I'm like, that is the thing that needs to be happening at all times if you are trying to recover. If your body is under any kind of stress, the stress hormones are high, and if there is no food coming in here, food from your bones and food from your muscles and food from your cartilage and food from your skin will be made by your body. So possible correlation, absolutely, especially if it has gotten worse after birth control. The Cascara has been working for me, been going every day. Awesome. I'm so excited about that. It's really helpful. What are your thoughts of a round face due to too much of cortisol. I increased my carbs and my calories, and even though I've only gained 3 pounds, my face changed so much, and also my belly is way more bloated. Okay, so round face, or we call it moon face, is usually due to thyroid. It can be due to like adrenal issues, but remember, you guys, edema is a huge part of hormone issues. What I mean by edema is water retention. So we have to remember that when we increase carbohydrates, our body's need for salt totally increases as well. And we need to make sure we are consuming plenty of salt and plenty of potassium. And if you're not getting plenty of potassium, I highly recommend a supplement. I use Trace Minerals drops, 99 milligram potassium drops, because potassium and sodium and magnesium really are super necessary for proper metabolic function. So if you haven't been eating carbs or sugar regularly and then you increase them, your body's going to retain so much water. So you want to make sure you increase your mineral intake. And then, if that continues, if a puffy face, sometimes if it's been only a couple of days, or you've only gained 3 pounds, it just give it some time to improve. If it gets worse over time, that would be the time to check up with what's up with your hormones, what's up with your thyroid, what's up with your hormones. You have to kind of finally actually see what's going on. But, when it comes to macronutrients and implementing carbohydrates when you have stress-based issues, remember, you cannot have adrenal issues without having thyroid issues. One comes after the other, and the thyroid is always the one that once it starts struggling, the adrenals have to pick up the slack. And stress hormones suppress thyroid function. So people are like, I don't have a thyroid issue, I only have a stress issue or an adrenal issue. And I'm like, no. You always have both, because even if your thyroid is normal on a lab, your stress hormones being high is suppressing your body's ability to use thyroid hormones. So your metabolism is still struggling. So when stress is high, thyroid function is low, and usually the moon phase is what we call it, is due to a thyroid issue. So just hang in there and see if it improves. Any tips for chronic cracked lips on corner of mouth? No doctors have helped. So I talked about this at my last live. A lot of times the cracked corners is usually due to inflammation. It can also be due to, if you have cracked and dry lips all over your lips, it can be due to dehydration. But dehydration, you guys, is not just about drinking more water. A lot of people just think oh, I'm dehydrated, I'm just gonna chug some water. No. You have to actually hydrate your cells, and your cells hydrate themselves by using minerals, specifically sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and then they also hydrate themselves. They need proper hormone balance. And so if we're under a lot of stress, our bodies can't really retain water properly, and so we do end up getting that dry, cracked lip sensation. But the actual red cracked lips at the corner usually is due to inflammation. I find that so many women who are sensitive to gluten get that. Sorry, I keep looking over here because there's this disgusting little bug on my windowsill. Stress, hormonal imbalances, and poor nutrient absorption. How I probably try hydrochloric acid supplement. So I would look into the hydrochloric. I don't know what the question is here, but I would look into the HCl challenge. And when you use HCl, you always need to make sure it is hydrochloric acid with pepsin and isn't just hydrochloric acid on its own. Also wondering, do you know why it's recommended to wait 1 month into gut healing to introduce bone broth and collagen? That's only recommended by some people. I think a lot of people overcomplicate gut healing or don't understand the gut. Sometimes it can be too hard on the gut with bone broth and collagen, but I think bone broth and collagen are some of the most easy to digest proteins. I always ask people, practitioners specifically, that are saying oh, you can't introduce this food, then I'm like, well, where is the person going to be absorbing their protein from? Because somebody that's gut impaired, really the only things that they can truly absorb well is going to be protein from bone broth and collagen and gelatin. But they can be hard to digest for some people, and so it's good to implement them slowly. But I don't have a hard fast rule of waiting a month. I implement them right away. I've seen someone talking about how even taking bioidentical hormones like progesterone or T3 can make your own body reduce or even shut down the production. Don't really believe it, but wanted your opinion. Yeah, there's two schools of thought that your body is a feedback system. So if there's T3 in production, or you're exogenously or taking T3 supplement or progesterone supplement, that your body can no longer make its own. But see, here's the deal. I did not ovulate until I took bioidentical progesterone. So how would I have made progesterone if I didn't take progesterone? Yeah. So also, like if your metabolic function is low, like T3 for example is low, what happens is your body cannot detoxify things properly. Your body, your liver relies upon T3 to work and function properly. And so my question is, okay, let's say you have a thyroid issue because you have an estrogen issue, and so you're having low T3. Your body can't detox estrogen properly or get it out of the body, which is going to continue to suppress thyroid function. So what do? Do you implement T3 so your liver works better and detoxifies the estrogen to therefore make your thyroid function better? Or do you go along in your utter misery with your low T3 production for 3-4 years, let it continue to damage your cells, your metabolism slowly but surely, and continue to suffer? I don't know. I'll let you decide, but your body is smarter than that. People love to dumb down the body. They love to say, oh, the body does this, the body does this, and I'm like, unless there is actually evidence to support that, you have literally just come up with an opinion about what you think happens. And there's usually always two schools of thoughts when it comes to science. And there's usually evidence of two separate things, and then science decides to run with one thing. And it's always like, take a step back. I've usually seen people be just helped by progesterone and T3 therapy and very rarely hurt by it. But I don't think they always need it either. I don't think they're always necessary. I don't think you should just jump to bioidentical hormones when you haven't figured out your nutrition or your lifestyle, or you're sleeping next to a cell tower every night. Like, those are things that would not help if you were still exposed to environmental or nutritional stressors on the daily. So you have to look at it in context based on the person. That's why I hate when people or practitioners give blanket advice. They are not remembering that it really depends on the context of a person. If a person is coming to you very, very sick, who has been sick for 7 years due to low progesterone and low T3, to tell someone that, oh, it's going to turn off the mechanisms of your body to create its own hormones, I'm like, the body's already not creating its own hormones. So do you want the therapeutic benefits of those hormones, or do you want to just keep trying to get the body to make its own hormones, where it's in this vicious cycle? Because remember, you need progesterone in order to stimulate the thyroid to make T4. You need the liver to be properly functioning to turn T4 into T3. And then you need T3 to actually be able to absorb nutrients, have your cells work properly, detoxify. I mean, it's this vicious cycle. And so sometimes when you put a hormone in that you haven't been making for years, you're throwing a wrench in that vicious cycle, and you're allowing the body to finally have a foothold to start working properly again. So, I don't think you should take those things when you don't need them, but I do think there's a lot of applications for them. I was in store and noticed there is liver in beef and calf. Does one? I'm not sure what that question means. Learned my progesterone and cortisol are low via the Dutch test. Doc going to start me on bioidentical progesterone. I understand what causes high cortisol, a bit confused on what causes low cortisol. So this is Hans Selz's theory of stress. Remember, there was a time when your cortisol was high. Your stress hormones were compensating for low progesterone and low thyroid function. But your body can only prioritize spending energy on making so much stress hormones for so long. There does come a point where your body's created stress hormones too much for too long. Sometimes this can happen for 10 or 15 years before the body literally cannot do it anymore. It cannot. And this is where the term adrenal fatigue comes from, which is a very not good term, because your adrenals don't fatigue. Your body either runs out of nutrients, your body tries to start protecting your tissues from cortisol, because remember, cortisol's purpose is to break down the tissues. And so your body eventually will lower the production of cortisol. So at one time, I would suspect that your stress hormones were very, very high. They probably stayed very high for a very long time, and eventually your body started to lower stress hormone production until it became lower than normal. So there's kind of this spot where your stress hormones will be high, and this is usually in the first stage of stress. And then you'll have people that come to you with normal cortisol levels, but they're in a very high stress symptom state. And then they'll eventually, that stress hormone will drop so low that it's in that low state. So it takes time to get to there. So that shows you probably that your body has been under stress for quite some time. Is excess estrogen a reaction to inflammation, or does inflammation come first from other issues in the body and the body responds with excess estrogen? Both. It's a vicious cycle. So estrogen causes inflammation, or I should say excess estrogen in relationship to progesterone causes inflammation, and then inflammation does induce an estrogen response. So it both happens. That's why estrogen gets so bad so quickly. It just is, it goes from a good thing to a bad thing in 2 seconds flat. Diagnosed with PCOS in November, not on birth control. Doctor put me on metformin, but didn't work. Still can't lose weight despite some diet changes and making sure I'm getting enough sleep and rest. What now? So, this is why I'm coming out with Fully Nourished. I think it's very important for women to know their bodies and then be able to have enough information to really try different things and experiment what works for their bodies. So, when a question like that comes up, it could be a literal million things that could be going on. Are you stressed out? Are you eating enough? Are you eating too many carbohydrates in relationship to protein? Is your blood sugar staying balanced? Are your stress hormones high? Is your thyroid stressed out? Is metformin causing more problems than good? Is your liver not detoxifying properly? Those are just a few that I'm coming up with right now, but there's like a million things that could be the problem when it comes to weight loss. That's why weight loss is one of those things where the question is not how do I lose weight? The question is why can't I lose weight? And a lot of people, I always say, so the answer to that question when you ask why I can't lose weight is that you're eating too much. Yet there's this list a mile long of hormonal issues it could be, but somebody's going to tell you it's just because you're eating too much and you're not exercising enough. No. So it probably has to do with detoxification, could have to do with a thyroid issue. Every single doctor, in my opinion, should be testing a woman with PCOS for thyroid issues. They should at least be checking their TSH, their T4, and their T3, if not a full thyroid panel. I think it's irresponsible for a doctor to not test stress hormones and thyroid issues in a PCOS problems, considering that those are the things that drive PCOS in the first place. Do you know the fluctuations or hormone levels that a girl has when going through puberty? I'm interested in what exactly happens and how much estrogen and progesterone triggers changes. So it's different in every woman. You have to understand that your adrenals don't actually kick in and create stress hormone until you're about 11 years old, or that's what's supposed to happen. But a lot of kids are actually born with thyroid issues, which forces the adrenals to kick in at a much earlier stage. This is why, very regularly now, kids are struggling with depression and anxiety before the age of 11, because their mothers weren't healthy enough when they were in the womb, and so that was imprinted onto them, unfortunately, and then it's this chain reaction of events. And so when you're a kid and you're going through puberty, your body is very sensitive to estrogen during that time. That's why young girls tend to have really harsh periods. They tend to they tend to have PMS symptoms and headaches and things like that, because they are very sensitive to estrogen. And unfortunately, we live in a modern world where there's so many estrogens everywhere, coming at us from every direction. And then what happens when a little young girl that's 14 years old goes to the doctor with heavy, clotty, crampy periods? They get put on literally a xenoestrogen pill, a fake estrogen pill, and it suppresses symptoms, but it makes the problems worse. And so, this is different for every woman. The question that you asked, when you first go through puberty, your body, your brain, your pituitary gland starts to talk with your ovaries first. In that brain to ovary connection, things start to wake up. Usually if women, my goal is to teach my daughter so much about her body that when that starts to happen, she starts to notice the small changes. You'll start to see women or young girls develop breasts and develop body hair and things like that, but that's due to the fluctuating hormones. And it's important for the the hormones to be fluctuating at first. When a girl's first going through puberty, they are just their hormones are kind of getting into a pattern, and you don't actually get into a full pattern until you're about 23 years old. So it's very common to have, you know, up and down hormones until around that age, till you're fully developed as a woman. So that's going to be different for every girl. I'm 23 and was told I don't ovulate. What should I do? I have a story called Progesterone that teaches you how to ovulate, or doesn't teach you how to ovulate, but it tells you what to do to get yourself ovulating. What is the lowest amount of estrogen throughout a cycle? It depends on the woman. You have 2 estrogen spikes, one right before ovulation and another one that's a little bit smaller mid-luteal phase. So it just really depends on the woman, but it shouldn't be high. I'm 23. Any advice for breastfeeding mamas? Sorry, Instagram's cutting me off. That's why I'm talking so fast. I will go live again to finish answering your questions if you didn't get them answered, if you want to join me again. But I'll answer this last question. Any advice from breastfeeding mamas? Make sure you're eating enough. Make sure your thyroid function is good. And you're going to probably need an extra 1,000 calories sometimes. So it's really important to make sure you're eating according to your energy output. If you're creating food for another human being, your energy output is going to be quite high. And then if you're exercising on top of that, or you're, you know, walking around during the day, or you have other kids to tend to, you need to be conscious of your energy output and intake according to that. I would eat every 2 hours on the dot. I would wake up in the middle of the night to eat, honestly. You want to make sure you're getting enough. Okay, so join me in the next live if you want me to continue answering your questions, and make sure you ask them there. See you in a second.